Hey there, lacrosse fans. On the show today, we take a look at the preseason rankings, check out strengths and weaknesses of teams in each region, hear from coaches around the SELC, and to cap things off, we predict the future. All you Twitter haters out there, get your fingers ready because the SELC preview show starts right now. Okay. Hey, lacrosse fans, we appreciate your patience. We'll tell you what's going on here in just a second. First off, I'm joined by Dave Franklin, Patrick Strawn. I'm Rhett McGibbon. This is what's going on. We originally were where you saw me at the studio here in Lynchburg, Virginia. We had a breaker failure. All of a sudden, nothing's working over there. They tell us the part has to be shipped in, so we can't get power to the studio. And you find us here, still in Lynchburg, probably about a mile and a half away from the studio at the Vine Center where the Liberty Flames play NCAA basketball, their men and women's team. So we're bringing you the show. It's about an hour and a half late, as you can see, but hopefully it's still going to be a good one. We got all our graphics and B-roll and all that stuff still going. So let's dive into it, guys. Take a look at the preseason rankings. They came out a while ago, but let's take a look at them right now. You got Virginia Tech at number 1. You also have Liberty at 2, Georgia Tech 3, Florida State at 4. You kind of so on and so forth. South Carolina, Georgia. Anything really strike you odd here, funny at all in the top 10 at least?
Nothing's really striking me funny. When it comes down to it, these top 4 teams are really the teams to compete with. They're really the standard setters in the SELC. They're all nationally ranked. 2 of these teams, Virginia Tech as well as Georgia Tech, made it to the national stage last year and were successful at the MCLA tournament. So it's really those 2 teams that you have to focus on in addition to the contenders, Liberty and Florida State at hand, to see who's really going to rise to the top as far as the SELC is concerned in 2016.
Pat, anything surprising to you at all?
No, nothing really surprising. I mean, the top 6 are the same as last year, and as Dave, I think he put it well, same teams are at the top of the heat, and the reason why is because most of them returned all their players and the depth that they had, so they're just going to be better this coming season. I mean, and there's a lot of big key names that we're going to touch on later in the show, but yeah, I mean, this league, as far as the top 6 go, filled with a lot of star power.
One thing there I find interesting at 13, Elon, that's new to Division I. We'll talk about them in a little while. First up, though, let's talk about Virginia Tech. They were number 1 in the Northwest Division last year. A lot of quality returning players, and one of your favorites, I know, Dave, stud goalie Brian Cooper back between the pipes.
Brian Cooper, along with defensive midfielder Patrick Greenwood, really set the tone for this team. They bring their lunch pail to work every day. It's the blue-collar nature that is brought them so much success. Ranked number 3 nationally in the preseason poll, made it to the quarterfinals last year where they lost to Colorado in overtime. The semifinals last year where they lost to Colorado in overtime. The year before, once again, extra minutes really did them in when they played UCSB in the quarterfinals. But again, they've really turned the corner and have really been the standard of success for the SELC, and it's great that Georgia Tech was able to follow their success out to Orange County last year.
Pat, you take a look at them. They have a new coach, Tim O'Brien, a bit more of an offensive mind that I've heard. Do you think this team's going to kind of go from that staunch defense to a bit more of a even style play, either one of you, offensively, defensively?
No, I think actually they'll probably be the same type of team. I like what you said, Dave. They are a blue-collar team. But also, you got to think, this is the team that led the SELC actually in offense last year. They had 240-plus goals for them, and they were one of the best scoring offenses in the entire nation. So I don't expect offense to be a drag. I mean, it'll probably definitely get a lot better because they have a bit of a more offensive-mind coach. But you forget also Matt Schroeder, he's still there. Yeah. He's going to be honing things in on the back end for the defense. So I expect the defensive core to be just as strong. And also, when you got a stud like Brian Cooper, who's definitely going to be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time defensive SCLC tournament MVP, you got to definitely be happy and confident what you have on your defensive side.
Last year in regular season play, they beat Liberty 15-7. Is the gap really that wide between these 2 teams, or is that just a bit of an anomaly?
No, I don't think that score was really indicative of the gap that exists between these 2 teams. 2 in-state rivals. Last year, Liberty was able to beat them in the regular season, and then in the rematch in the conference championship, Virginia Tech was able to get the better of them. I don't think that 15-7 is really indicative of exactly how far apart they are. I think that they're right there neck and neck, just as the polls say, number 1 and number 2, in my opinion, right now.
Definitely be interesting to see where we've had our say about the Virginia Tech Hokies. Standing by, the head coach with Monica McKenzie.
Joining me now is Tim O'Brien, the new head coach of the Virginia Tech Hokies. Now, you guys are the defending conference champs and recently back-to-back champions. So do you think maybe we're going to be seeing a three-peat here and potentially a dynasty forming in Blacksburg?
Thanks. And yeah, we certainly hope so. definitely looking forward to this year. And as my first year, I hope to continue the trend that Coach Schroeder's laid down for me.
As you said, you're taking over the reins from Coach Schroeder. He was the co-SELC and MCLA Coach of the Year. Does that add any pressure to you as you make your debut this season?
You know what? Absolutely. I mean, there's definitely some big shoes to fill there, but thankfully Matt's still coaching with me on the sidelines. He's taking over as defensive coordinator. I'm handling the offensive side of things, and I think together we make a great pair. And I think both of us together, I think we can get done what we ultimately want to do, is take it another step further than we did last year and go all the way.
There are a few teams looking for head coaches, and some of those are Florida State and Kentucky. So what made you decide on the Hokies?
Well, actually, I did an undergraduate degree up at Roanoke College. That's where I played my varsity lacrosse, and then I actually to Virginia Tech to pursue some graduate studies. And so right now I'm actually a PhD student studying biomedical engineering at Virginia Tech, and it's kind of where the chips fall. They got lacrosse here, good lacrosse, and part of the program.
Now, you guys are ranked #1 in the preseason polls. Obviously, winning a conference championship would be huge in your first season as a coach. So tell me a little bit about some individual goals you've set for yourself and also for the entire team.
Sure. For myself, obviously, the more wins, the better. As far as for the team, I think it's more about them than anything. It's about giving them the best experience that they can get individually and as a team. And win or lose, we like to say that as coaches, we want to give our players the best experience ever. So if we can do, at the end of 4 years, if those freshmen make it all the way to the senior, at the end of 4 years, they walk across that graduation stage, and I can shake their hands, and that's huge for me at the end of the day. So hopefully, we can have a lot of fun and win a lot of games.
Thanks, Monica. All right, from 1 to 2, we take a look now at Liberty University, senior-laden team. You can kind of say this is their year. They have so many seniors. The whole midfield basically is seniors. Brett Bernardo, Ryan Miller. Can you say anything bad about these guys, really?
There's nothing bad to say. I think that the biggest test for Liberty that Coach McQuillan will ultimately back up is that he has a huge void to fill in net now that Ethan Kamholtz has moved on. It's basically a two-way competition between two freshmen right now. Braden Harriman and Matt Nichols. Braden Harriman, a real technical, very, very sound goalkeeper who's really able to take advantage of all the necessary skills that a goalkeeper can have. And at the other end, Matt Nichols is really just a big daddy. Great first step, a lot of skills, but really takes up a lot of the net. Large frame goalie. So it'll be interesting to see who's able to start net, who's able to keep the job. But at the end of the day, as you said, Nick Lambardozzi, Brett Bernardo, Bryce Marakovich, Ryan Miller, and Chad Moore all really need to put a lot of balls into the back of the net to sustain some of the experience that they lost on the defensive end last year.
I think it also is something that the Flames need to definitely work on. As you touched on net, I think it is defensive, though. I think it's the guys in front of these netminders that really have their jobs really cut out for them, because the long poles are definitely going to have to start getting things more suited and put together for them just to protect these young goaltenders, and definitely got to help them out. Like, as we talk about, these are two rookies, so definitely make them feel a little bit more comfortable, because you got some big games on your schedule. You got 6 ranked teams that you're facing this coming season, so definitely going to be big tests and big games for them to fill. And like I said, the long poles really got to get it done for this team. All
right, taking a look now at Tennessee Volunteers. They're bringing back 2 guys from injury, Gabrick and Young. How much of a role can these 2 guys play, 2 seniors, after they've been out for a season due to a knee injury? Like, obviously, you're going to have to get your timing back. Can 2 guys really make that large of an impact in this division? Yeah,
I think as far as senior leadership is concerned, if these guys are able to stay healthy, it'll help a lot. But the guy that I'm really looking at is sophomore attackman Andrew Samuelson out of Alexandria, Virginia last year. 21 goals. He scored 4 against Liberty. He had 5 against Central Michigan. I think that Mike Zampano, the defensive coordinator at Liberty, is going to have to find a way to have an answer for Samuelson, because allowing any player to score 4 goals is really not in Liberty's defensive game plan.
You got to also think about Connor Hart. He's one of the older guys on this team. He's a solid attackman as well. He's going to be working very well with Samuelson. And then also the guy that I know their coach is really happy about is their goaltender. He's a sophomore stud, 57% save percentage, and goaltender Ben Kamermere. he was actually pretty phenomenal for them last year as a freshman. We don't have an all-rookie team, but I believe he would have been on the all-rookie team at the SELC level if we had had one, and definitely got to expect big things from him from his sophomore year.
All right, George Washington University, real quick, only their 4th year in the MCLA. How happy should they be with their progress?
They should be pretty happy. They really came from a less competitive sect of non-varsity lacrosse. They're going to have to find a way to have Tim Wetzel, their really two-way midfielder, produce in absence of Charlie Frattini, the senior attackman last year, who scored 44 points, has graduated, is now playing abroad in England. Wetzel, not as flashy a player as Frattini, but he's going to have to find a way to put those points up on the board that they lost now that Charlie Frattini is gone.
Northwest Division, definitely a division you want to keep your eye on throughout the year. When we come back, we take a look at the Northeast and the Southwest. Don't go anywhere.
Imagine a university that brought the classroom to you, that was interested in its students, not investors. A university that had programs of study tailored to your individual needs. Imagine a university that worked on your schedule and not its own. Imagine a university that was affordable and family-friendly. Liberty University is available now.
Well, the number one advantage of taking classes with Liberty University Online is the flexibility. I have 3 children, and it's always been very important for me to stay at home with my children whenever possible, and taking classes with Liberty Online has allowed me to do that. As an online student, you'll feel encouraged and supported by your professors through the whole process. They genuinely care and are concerned about your education.
Hey there, welcome back. Let's take a look at the Southwest Division. First place last year was Georgia Institute of Technology. You know, defense wins for Tech. Is it going to be the same story this season?
There's no doubt about it. They're led by Sonnenfeld in goal, Ken Lovick. It's unbelievable how much leadership he brings to the table, being the MCLA president as well as the head coach of this team. But on the offensive side of the ball, defensive will be the focus, but you really have to look at Chris O'Brien, a real shifty attackman, wears the number 22 jersey, very similar to a guy previously who wore that jersey, Casey Timmerman. I think they have a lot of similarities, and I think that O'Brien on the offensive end will be able to produce what Sommerfeld does in goal, and that will really bring it all together for the Buzz.
They talked about the fact that they have some added depth this season. Is that enough to kind of push them over the hump, and are they a real threat to win the SELC this year?
I think so. You saw 2 teams actually go undefeated in the SELC championship in Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, so definitely made for an exciting game. And you got to credit Tech because they just had a perfect game plan when they played the Yellow Jackets, and that's why it led to them coming away with a 10-4 victory. I think it'll be a different story this coming year, a lot more tighter game. You got to think about Brian Connolly. He's a good attackman. He'll be huge for them. Yeah. Also, a guy that will be the biggest key for them probably outside of their goaltender, the man who's winning the faceoffs for them, Holland Frost, all-conference honoree. I expect big things for him.
Yeah, well, that's our – you're laughing at me because I'm holding myself like it's cold. No, he's just definitely a stud. This team looks to be full of studs, and Malika is standing by with their head coach.
Also the president of the MCLA. Now, you guys had amazing top 10 finish this season, and you're only losing 1 player to graduation. So tell me a little bit about what you see now for your team heading forward this season.
I think there's a lot of excitement for sure, and a lot of optimism at the same time. We have a great group of young freshmen coming in who are going to be led by a great senior class. We've got 6 to 7 guys in their senior year this year who are looking to lead the team. Last year was great, but we didn't come away with anything. And so I think the real drive of this upper-class team is to really put a stamp on something this year, whether it be an SELC title, a national title. So there's really a lot of excitement and optimism amongst the team to kind of get the season underway.
Now you have Matt Sommerfeld on your team. He's potentially one of the best defensive players the MCLA has ever seen. So how does that add to your defense, knowing that you have him, and just how does that kind of boost the team's confidence, knowing they can rely on him on defense?
Oh, yeah, the continuity of having a goalie in the cage for 4 straight years is a great thing. You just know what's back there. You know what his leadership's like. You know what skill set's behind you. We've been very lucky in the Georgia Tech history that we've had a lot of 4-year starting goalies, and Matt is just one of the best we've had. And like any quarterback, I think, in football, Matt will tell you that his success is really based on all the great work of the defensemen in front of him. He's got a front line that's fantastic. Some all-conference players in there, and so it makes his job a lot easier. And that's what our goal on the defensive end is to make his job easy.
Now switching over to offense, you have 3 key players, O'Brien, Connolly, and Frost. Now, as you've been mentioning, defense is normally the name of your game, but with a potent attack like that, do you maybe see that changing a little bit in the future?
We certainly hope. Last year was certainly sort of a breakout year for us in terms of offense. It's, we've always sort of struggled on the offensive end of the field. So last year, getting over double digits average per game was huge for us. Those guys are all back. We've got Chris back. Obviously, Brian Conley, they're joined by great freshman talent, and Timmy Peterson from Massachusetts, who's been having a great spring so far, and with practice, got a nice fall. And added Holland Frost and a very experienced senior midfield first line that we have. We've got a lot of experience there and a lot of athleticism that should certainly help us on the offensive end of the field this year. So it should alleviate a little bit of pressure on our defense to have to keep us in games with them doing their job.
Now, as I mentioned, you're the head coach of Georgia Tech and also the president of the MCLA. So talk to me a little bit about the exposure and growth that you've seen in the league in recent years.
It's been pretty dramatic. In fact, we made our big first step this year in hiring our first full-time employee. We hired a director of external affairs in Jack Coyne. Jack came over from U.S. Lacrosse and covered Division II and Division III for many years, and we're really excited to have him on board. He came on board with us back late in the fall, and he's been just doing an unbelievable job pumping stories out, increasing our social media presence. With the growth of the sport so much on the high school and youth level, the MCLA is only going to get a great return in the future, just more teams playing and more kids playing. And so Jack's got a real big responsibility of keeping the MCLA in people's minds, educating them on what we're all about. And so we're really excited about the future of what the MCLA will have in a marketing aspect.
Now, there's kind of a misconception with the term club lacrosse. I mean, we've seen a lot of great lacrosse in the league's 20-year history, so it's definitely not following that club lacrosse trend, if you will. So tell me a little bit, I mean, you just touched on it there, about the future that you see in the next coming years for the league.
That's kind of a great question. At the same time, it's sort of an open-ended one for us, as we're still evolving ourselves. I mean, we've been around for 20 years, but I think the growth we've seen in the last 5 years to even 7, 8 years has been dramatic. The number of teams that have come on board, the level of talent, the way it's been risen has been unbelievable, and something we probably didn't expect to see. We certainly want to do whatever we can on the national level to try to get more great sponsors like we have in Under Armour, like we have in Lax World, to do everything we can to our players to make the sport a little more affordable. We're going to look really closely at our national tournament as well to find out if there's something we can do better for our teams, maybe look to a regional format. Maybe a back-to-back weekend format instead of a week-long. So we've got some goals both on the competitive side of the field in terms of what we're going to do with our national tournament, as well as some things we want to do with partnerships nationwide to hopefully, again, bring more exposure to the MCLA and ultimately would be great is make the sport even a little more affordable for all of our players nationwide.
Thanks to Ken Lovett for taking the time to join us. Pat, University of Georgia up next. Cayman Sotude, the guy that really controls the offense for this team.
Yeah, he is. He's not a guy that will really light the lamp offensively, but he'll make big plays when they need him to make them, and that's the big thing for them. Georgia is more known of a defensive team, and they did some solid things, make it to the semifinals with the SELC. This is a team that could potentially finish in the top 25 of the nation this coming year, and you're definitely expecting a huge thing, as I know Dan touched on with about Tech. They're about more of a blue-collar style team. They're about the same way, the mirror image of Tech, just probably, unfortunately, a little bit less skilled, is what I would say.
Dave, Georgia and Georgia Tech, there's obviously a gap there. What does Georgia need to do to close that gap?
It's really hard to say. Good old-fashioned hate. I mean, it's one of the best rivalries in the SELC as well as the MCLA. You want to know what? The fact of the matter is that Georgia was a team that won the SELC championship in 2013, made it to the national tournament, and got a first-round draw against Arizona State. It just seems as though they're so far removed from that. I think that their culture is a little bit more casual. They're not necessarily laser-focused on winning championships anymore, and I think that they just need to somehow find a way to get back to where they were in 2013 in order to give Georgia Tech more of a battle this year.
Take a look next at Auburn. Braxton Roman, their guy, 10 goals, 12 assists last season. Is this a team that's kind of going to be in the same position, middle of the pack in that division?
Yeah, I think that they're just the middle of a pack team. I think that it's great that assistant coach Seth Gordon is taking over, so there's some level of consistency. Yeah. As we know, the lower tiered teams within the SELC usually have a lot of coaching turnover, so it's good that they have consistency with an assistant coach taking over. I mean, they have a pretty good out-of-conference slate playing Oklahoma and Michigan State. I think it's really interesting that Michigan State is also also going to be playing against Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Liberty, a real great team from the CCLA, really spread out between the SELC. But the Auburn Tigers have been a middle-of-the-pack team within the SELC and the SELC Southwest for a while, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Alabama up next. This is my question. Is lacrosse a sport that could just gain some speed, some steam at Alabama? You think about it, the enrollment's huge. It's such a great game. You got mixtures of football, basketball, hockey, and everything in it. Could it ever just take off there?
You want to know what? When I was playing at Emory University, Alabama was a Division II team, similar to what Wake Forest recently went through, which we'll talk about in just a second. Alabama was an underperforming FBS school as far as lacrosse was concerned, and they played Division II. Because of the success that they enjoyed throughout the rest of their athletic department, I think that they got some good talent in there. They had the Palasek brothers who were really bringing everything to a new level. They got Marcus McCain, who was a head coach last year, an assistant coach who won a national title with Colorado, came to Alabama. You thought he was going to really turn things around while the last Palasek was there. And at the end of the day, the coaching path there was hard to sustain. He leaves, becomes an assistant coach at Oregon. The last Palasek brother graduates, and now I think that Alabama is taking steps backward and might be a good candidate to go back to Division II someday.
Okay. Pat, any thoughts on that?
I think Alabama. It's hard to say because they're a football school. And, honestly, that's their bread and butter, and even baseball. Those are their two main concerns down south for that team, for the Tide. So it's hard to say if club lacrosse is really going to catch up steam there.
Take a look at Mississippi. 43% of the roster are freshmen, probably expecting a tough year in that regard. A building year for them?
You would think so. I mean, it's great that Ole Miss seems to have hype behind their program every year. They're getting transfers from Division I programs. They're getting recruits from hotbed areas such as Long Island and Maryland. I'm kind of tired of the hype. I want to see the results. They put a lot of hype behind the program last year. They went 3-10. So let's see them, get above 500, and then I'll start, paying more attention to the things that they put out in the preseason releases.
All right, moving on to our next division. That's going to be the Northeast. Winning that one last year, University of South Carolina. Only lost 3 starters from last year, and Russell Couture is back and lead the pack when it comes to attackmen.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Couture is definitely going to be the straw that stirs the drink offensively for South Carolina, but I think that the electricity for them is with their junior long stick midi, Hayden Madison. 2 goals last year, 33 ground balls. If you have a player like that who can control things in between the lines, it can spark transition while giving a good foundation to your defense, and that's where offense ultimately comes from in the end.
They said they have assets to burn. This team has so much offense. An issue for them could be being selfish. If their selflessness comes through, is this a team that could kind of, I hate to use a dark horse when they're ranked so high in the preseason rankings, but could this be a team that kind of moves up and gets in that top 1, 2, or 3, possibly?
I think so. They have Demetrius Pekunis in goal. He is a transfer from Stevenson University. He performed really well last year. I think that if he could emerge as a leader and convince their offense to be a little bit less selfish, they can really emerge as a top team in this conference.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement because, unfortunately, when you look at this conference, the top part of it is stacked. I mean, you got 4 teams that all finished in the top 20 last year. And Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech finished in the top 10. Liberty and Florida State both finished in the top 20. In South Carolina, they were just outside of it, getting votes, and they saw times at rank. So it's hard, but you think you could see them potentially be one of those dark horse. If they don't, unfortunately, like last year, they got upset in the first round, which I think was not something they expected coming. But I believe Georgia, 7-6, so a tight game.
Yeah.
So they definitely, as you said, if they can learn to play that team ball and really work the ball around and cycle it around, get everyone involved on the offense, it'll definitely pay dividends for them in the long run.
Quick note about them, real quick. Prayers go to Colin Byrne, whose mom passed away. He's a senior on this team this year. Jean Ann Riley, this season's dedicated to her honor. So thoughts and prayers. Give him a tap on the shoulder when you play against him this year. All right, next up, NC State. Brady Edwards, solid goalie who really quarterbacks the defense of this team. How important is he going to be along with John Huey?
I think that both those guys are going to be really important, but they're going to see a lot of support from their senior defensive midfielder, Michael Mastriani. He's a local kid from the state of North Carolina. He was first team all SELC last year as a D midi, which is not an easy thing to do when you're not putting stats on the board. But it seems as though that every time a top opponent plays against North Carolina State, they see this Mastriani kid, his hustle, his heart, his desire, the way that he's able to really keep goals off the board for the other team and just do all the little things right. So I think that he's going to be a huge support factor for their defense that will help the Wolfpack find success.
I think also something that will be huge for them is obviously he's talking about defense. I'm talking about their offense. Like they're definitely going to get things rolling, I think, a little bit better with Jeff Williams and also Adam Johnson. These are 2 guys returning that they expect big things coming out of them. Also in Cole Deaver, a senior face-off midfielder that they expect actually to be one of the best in the conference, potentially on that all-conference honorary team at the end of the season. So they're definitely expecting a lot more bigger things than they've seen in year past coming on the offensive side of the ball.
Another kind of neat note about them, John Huey, who we just mentioned, a student that's president kind of got dropped in this guy's lap. He wanted to make the team so successful. He said, if I don't win a playoff game before I leave, I would consider my tenure here a failure. So hopefully, for that sake
alone. A lot
alone,
of pressure to put on
yeah,
yourself.
I know, but hopefully we can win a playoff game. All right, Clemson, 4 of their 5 top scorers returning. Very young team last year. If they progress and these young guys developed over this past fall, is that a team that could maybe be a dark horse in the Northeast? Is that even a possibility?
No. Clemson has been on a downward trajectory ever since their coaching change when Buff Grubb left and Joe Connor took over. Joe Connor has a 7-21 overall record in the MCLA, 2 really bad losing seasons at the University of Miami, including a winless season. It seems like Clemson's schedule is getting less impressive as far as national competition, less impressive as far as games played. So I don't really see much coming from. I mean, again, this was a program that used to compete for SELC titles. Play a lot of out-of-conference game. Buff Grubb, who's really a mainstay in the SELC, he always looked to compete at the highest level. And, Joe Connor, who's a guy who had no success at Miami, comes into Clemson and is having similar results.
All right, Elon moving up to the Division I level this year, taking the place of Wake Forest. What's going to happen here? Are they kind of a wild card? What's the deal?
I think Elon is a bit of a wild card. I mean, not from this same state that it's kind of like, because they were a big rivalry with the Flames when they first played them in Division II, and I expect that rivalry probably to pick up once things start getting rolling for them. But I think they still have a lot of talent still on this team and definitely going to be able to get things rolling. I think the biggest thing that they're going to have to worry about, though, is on the back end defensively. Yeah. That's the key that they want, and that's, I think, the name of the game for them.
A lot of teams have successfully transitioned from Division II to Division I. Liberty, Davenport, last year's national champion, Grand Canyon University used to be a Division II team. Elon has a great academic and athletic culture. They had great results in SELC Division II. And with all these reasons that are related to Wake Forest, I think that there's a lot of reasons why this upgrade for them makes sense. The issue is that it's my fear that Elon's reasons behind this move is less driven by competition factors and more behind an effort to increase sorority attendance at home games by bringing bigger, better branded schools on campus for home games. And on top of that, if Steve Bailey wants to take a Bill Belichick-like approach to engaging with the media, I want to see some Bill Belichick-like results in the win column as well.
Okay, their stud goalie is Joey McLaughlin. He might be McLaughlin at what you just said, but make sure you stay with us. When we come back, we take a look at the Southeast region.
I really wanted to make sure that I learned everything I needed to know to be successful in whatever career I chose, but I didn't want to lose that sense of how it all relates to me as a Christian. And as I study, I find it a lot easier to develop a sermon because it's already something that I'm engrossed in, so it's easy for me to glean a little bit of my studies and preach it to those behind bars. I've actually seen people go from unsaved to saved in the jail ministry through the simple messages I'm gleaning from my studies.
Imagine a university that brought the classroom to you, that was interested in its students, not investors. A university that had programs of study tailored to your individual needs. Imagine a university that worked on your schedule and not its own. Imagine a university that was affordable and family-friendly. Liberty University is available now.
All right, the southeast region of the SELC. Lots of fun to be had in this one. Florida State University winning the thing last year. Will Goodman, he's gone. All right, the younger brother is still there. They got 17 new players. How's this going to affect them?
I think that the biggest storyline with Florida State coming in ranked number 19th in the MCLA preseason poll, defending champions of their region, it's got to be the coaching change. We all remember talking about Matt Doyle last year, the very, very confident coach from Long Island taking over that program, saying that they were going to go undefeated and win a national championship, take down the 2 big dogs out in Colorado. He brought in his very good friend and his former teammate from Syracuse, Jerry DiLorenzo, to coach up the defense, and I think that DiLorenzo, who's a more experienced coach, got to Tallahassee, and the players and the community around Florida State lacrosse said, maybe this guy should be our head coach. So that's exactly what they did. Doyle is no longer there. Jerry DiLorenzo was promoted, and I think that he's going to have to work very hard working with Davis Goodman to really replicate the results that Will Goodman was able to produce last year. They were the two top scorers, the two brothers from Orlando, but ultimately it's time for little brother to step up and take on the leadership role and the production role as far as goal scoring, as did his big brother.
Yeah, DiLorenzo is definitely a coach that I think has definitely earned the respect, and he's won the team over.
Yeah.
And definitely he wanted to be on the show. Actually, he was going to do an interview, but we had some technical difficulties on our side. Surprise there. But I think that's a huge thing for them. Like, you got the teams back already. But I think you're going to have to see a different idea because, yes, I think Davis Goodman, he will be huge for this team. He's an honorable All-American. But you got to wonder, is he going to have a sophomore slump because he doesn't have his brother, Will Goodman? That happens a lot of times when the younger brother has that 1 year with the older brother, and then they're still a talented player, but they're not putting up the same numbers because everyone's looking at them to produce the way the older brother is. And now he's even wearing Will Goodman's number, too. He's wearing number 10. So big shoes to fill.
It's an interesting note that he's going to be wearing his brother's jersey, because I was actually going to say the important thing that he has to focus on is really finding his own identity. You know, how to.
Well, not so good of a start. Anyways, Florida, a team that had a negative goal differential right off the bat. They made anything by that, guys. All right, negative goal differential right off the bat. They had 116 goals for, 123 against. However, a 3-1 division record. Is this a team that's going to be able to stay where they're at, allowing more goals than they scored last year? Are they going to take a dip in this division, or are they going to hang around right at that 2 spot?
It's tough because I think that UCF is biting right at their ankles. They have a new head coach. Alex Breslin takes over for Ryan Winters, who had a very long tenure at the University of Florida. So I think that, as you said, UF is going to have to work hard on their goal differential if they want to hold off the UCF Knights as far as taking their top 2 spot in their representation in the SELC tournament. And, you know, the best thing about trying to increase goals that you're scoring and take away goals that your opponents are scoring is time of possession. Best way to increase time of possession, have a great face-off man. They have Aaron Silcott. He might be the best in the conference.
Yeah, I think actually, I believe, as you were just touching on, I think the Knights are going to be definitely another team that's going to be solid. I expect to see them back in the SCLC playoffs again because I feel like it is a 2-man race between them and also Florida State as far as who's going to win the Southeast.
Yeah, Central Florida, they got hammered by FSU last year.
They did.
Georgia Tech. So how do they narrow that gap? Is it just recruiting, or how much development can you do with your guys during the offseason to narrow the gap?
Well, James Foote does a great job of recruiting. He really has that Orlando territory covered. He really knows the Florida high school scene there. I think that, you know, they have taken some big dips against some good competition, but at the same time, they played Virginia Tech close last year. So they're just trying to find ways to get over the hump. They're led by 2 Division I transfers, Ian Gelbach, an attackman out of Mercer University, then Justin Schwartz is a long pole who was injured for most of the last year, who comes from Manhattan College. So I think that taking elevated NCAA Division I talent, you know, plugging them into an MCLA system, James Foote is as consistent as coach as any in the SELC, and I think that these are the sorts of things, and finding a way to get over the hump, beat a team like Virginia Tech, have closer results against the top teams in the conference, that's what the Knights definitely have to focus on, especially if they hope to jump Florida and join Florida State, you know, representing the Southeast region in the SELC tournament.
All right, University of Miami, party on the street where the heat is on, team that's on a rebuild. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, they have a new coach. I think that Aaron Cavalier is going to do a really good job for them. He takes over for Dale Wood. I think that now that Dan Pizer is no longer doing the student leadership things that he used to do, they will be able to progress a lot better. Look out for Brett Tracy. He is a long stick Midian defenseman who transferred from Towson University, great NCAA Division I program after his freshman year as a sophomore at Miami. 92 ground balls. 33 of 39 face-offs won, 3 goals and 5 assists. This is a long stick midi, a Swiss Army knife that really does it all.
Yeah, you got to also look out for Harry McCreary. The guy was an all-conference honoree. He's going to be the guy that really leads this offense. 17 goals, 17 assists. I expect big things for him. He was just an honorable mention. I expect that to be different this season. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on the first team this year because he's got that versatile attack, and especially being a senior year. But also you got to think of Chase Oswald, the guy who's honing things in on the back end for them. 54.5 save percentage, only in his first year as a starter. This year, he's got a second season. He's going to be that much better.
This is a team also that lost basically their whole midfield. They were all seniors last year. How long does it take you as a team to recover from that?
It's going to take a while, and I think that Liberty University is going to have to kind of learn some of those lessons next year. When you lose an entire midfield line, or 5 of your top 6 guys who are running at that position, not only is it a recruiting effort or a rebuilding effort, it's as I said before, it's a re-identifying effort. These are the guys that are doing it on both ends of the field who are responsible for so much. So when you're losing a lot of senior leadership, it's not even so much about recruiting and finding fresh talent. It's about having guys waiting in the wings and developing those players so there's less issues with the turnover.
And you think about lacrosse, United States, you think, or at least I do, a bit more northeast, all the way down to Miami, so far down. Is the recruitment effort that harder for them to be able to bring in quality guys to take those places?
I don't think so, because you got to think of
the beach. Is that what you're thinking?
I mean, you get the beach, and you just said it, fun in the sun. So I mean, absolutely. Like, why wouldn't you? I think it's a hotbed of a reason why to get kids there. You sell them on the area, and then that's how you start uplifting the program. And I think that's a good way to start getting things rolling for them, as far as show them what the life around Miami is like, show them what we offer, not just as a program, but as everything outside of the program too, and then just bring it all home.
The thing is that Florida high school lacrosse is very good. So there's a lot of high school players in the state who are going to NCAA institutions, and those that aren't are going to the top MCLA D2 schools like Florida Gulf Coast and Palm Beach Atlantic, or they're looking at the well-established Gators, Florida State, or UCF. So Miami's a little bit late to the party. They've had a lot of turnover in the coaching spot, and they're just playing a little bit of catch-up right now. But they should have no issues recruiting. It's all about the U, baby.
Definitely interested to see how Central Florida does in this division. Sure to be fun. All right, coming up next, Monica talks to Kyle McQuillan on what it takes to build a successful D2 program into a D1 one. We'll be back.
As Liberty University athletics continue to climb to new heights, Game On is your weekly source for all things Flames. We bring you inspirational stories of faith in this Division I program, as well as all the news and highlights that you crave. Game On is covering the world's largest evangelical university like no one else. So join us each week to see what's happening around Flames Nation. Get in the game and watch Game On.
Welcome back to the SELC preseason show. I'm now joined by head coach of Liberty, Kyle McQuillan. Thanks for being here.
No problem.
Now, taking a look at your last season, you were ranked 17th. So walk me through a little bit about your thoughts on how you think your guys did that year.
I think it was our second year as a Division I program. I think we took some bumps. We took a little bit of a risk going out west and playing some teams and some great competition. And I think we made some strides, absolutely. We were 21st at the end of our first season in D1, finished 17th. But we know we've got a lot more ground to cover this year. So don't want to call it a failure by any means, but we definitely feel like we underperformed and we left a lot on the table.
Now, it's interesting that you say you think you underperformed because you were actually tied for having the most all SELC representatives on the team last year. So what does that say about the caliber of talent you have and maybe where you can continue to build in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that speaks to how much we've grown as a program and definitely the depth that we have on both sides of the ball. But I also think it speaks to the SELC and how much better we've come, or how far we've come as a conference. I mean, teams like Virginia Tech and Florida State and Georgia Tech and just a lot of these programs really taking steps forward. And Liberty's not the only team that's doing that by any means. So for us, we just have to continue to recruit at a very high level, continue to add depth to our program. And it's great having rivalries with a lot of these great programs. And I think there's nothing but good things for not only Liberty, but a lot of these teams in the SELC.
Now, looking ahead to this season, you have a pretty tough schedule ahead of you, facing off against 6 nationally ranked teams. How do you think that challenge is going to help strengthen your team now?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge similar to last year. We definitely don't want to schedule light, but we definitely want to take a step back a little bit this year, focus on the SELC, focus about taking care of business in our own backyard, and that's definitely going to be the primary goal for us is that SELC championship. So don't want to change too much. We've got a lot of returning guys. We graduated 3 guys, so really outside of those a couple players. We're definitely coming back with the same team, and hopefully with a little bit more power.
Now, you individually have been coaching this team since it was reinstated here at Liberty 6 seasons ago. So walk me through a little bit about what that journey's been like, going from D2, D1, and just the whole 6 years.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, it's crazy. If I saw where this team was and the opportunities that we've been given as a program by this university and the opportunities through the SELC and the MCLA, I'd be blown away at where we are and how far we've come. And I think it's just a testament to, A, this university, and B, the kids that we continue to bring in and the coaches that have continued to be involved in this program. So it's definitely been a lot of fun, and I definitely don't underestimate this group or this university by any means anymore. And I think that we've got a lot of good lacrosse and a lot of victories ahead of us.
You're the head coach at Liberty, but you're also the D1 director of the SELC. We saw a lot of teams getting exposure last season playing out-of-conference teams. So tell me how that helps just the entire league in general.
Well, it's great. I mean, we saw a team like Florida State go into the state of Colorado and come away with a big win. Obviously, we saw Virginia Tech do the same, Georgia Tech. I think that definitely helped cement the SELC, or start cementing the SELC as a conference that has some real contenders. So if you go through the SELC, I think the schedules for the most part are getting a little bit more difficult. We're starting to draw some of those big programs to the East Coast, which is great. I know, speaking in terms of Liberty, we've got Michigan State at home. We're able to play Boston College, and we've got Texas State down in Tallahassee. So we're getting those out-of-conference games in, and I think the strength of schedule is so important, and a lot of teams don't take that into account as much, and I think you need to schedule big if you want to be big.
Absolutely. Well, best of luck to your team this season. Thanks for joining us now.
Thanks.
Coming up next, we'll have Dave Franklin talking about the Division II League. Welcome back. Joining me now is Dave Franklin, and as you just mentioned, you're a bit of a Division II expert. So we're here to get some of your expertise and hear what you have to say about the league. So obviously we could spend a lot of time talking about all the different teams in the D2 level, but in your mind, really quick, what top teams stick out to you?
Well, no question, Kennesaw State is the main team that really stands out to me. All of the resources that have been pumped into that lacrosse program there outside of Atlanta in the state of Georgia, it's remarkable. Brand new stadium. They have buy-in from the Atlantic Coast Conference for their conference tournament. They have a professional MLL team there with the Atlanta Blaze, and they've just done a good job making a great lacrosse culture at Kennesaw State. So I think they're a program to watch in Division II. Savannah College of Art and Design, for the most part, they've probably been the most consistent team in SELC Division II. Again, NAIA school that focuses on art and design, that will be phasing out of the MCLA along with Tennessee Wesleyan College, another top team in the conference. They are a team that really probably wants to make a really nice electric exit from the MCLA as they transition out into another league. And then there's Florida Gulf Coast and Palm Beach Atlantic University, two schools in Florida that really have gotten a lot of support from their programs as of late. Florida Gulf Coast has really seen a lot of success. Palm Beach maybe on a little bit of a lower level. Palm Beach, very similar to Emmanuel University a few years ago, will be transitioning into NCAA Division II, and I hope that as Florida Gulf Coast continues to stay in the MCLA at the Division II level, if they go up to Division I, that they can continue to really excel nationally.
Now, as you just touched on, teams moving up to the D1 level from D2, do you see the level of skill narrowing at all in between those leagues in the future?
You know, in my opinion, I really believe that the top teams in Division I and the top teams in Division II, from an individual talent perspective, there isn't really much of a drop-off. I think the big drop-off occurs as you go to the lower-tiered teams in each division. But when you compare the top teams in Division I to the top teams in Division II, the top Division I teams are usually going to win. They have better resources. They have a little bit more of a stringent practice schedule. But I think that as these recruits leave high school and come into the SELC, the kids that are going into the top programs in Division II and the kids that are going into the top programs in Division I, a Florida Gulf Coast recruit compared to a Liberty recruit or a Georgia Tech recruit, Kennesaw State throwing in there in the mix as well for Division II, these are all very talented high school players.
Absolutely. What challenges do you see for teams moving up in the future?
I think that there's a lot. I think that the whole landscape of the SELC as far as Division II is going to change. It's always been a very bottom-heavy league. Ken Lovick will attest to that. There's always been, more better national results from Division II, more so than Division I as of late. And now that the MCLA rules have changed as far as football classification, how that affects Division I and Division II, I think that along with teams matriculating out of the MCLA, either to the NAIA or certain tiers of the NCAA, it's really going to be interesting to see how that all develops. But the main thing that I'm really seeing is that there are some Division I FBS programs who are currently in Division I, much like Wake Forest, maybe similarly Alabama. They might want to take a step back down to Division II. I think that West Virginia would be a good candidate for that as well. And then ultimately, it's really going to be interesting to see who can stay consistently high in Division II. Is it going to be a school like Florida Gulf Coast that has Division I resources and really stands behind its program?
Yeah.
Will Emory University, my alma mater, take advantage of the recruiting scope that they have and really rise to the top again? It should certainly be interesting because, again, the landscape is going to change in Division II for the SELC for a multitude of reasons.
Now, can you talk a little bit about recruiting for D2? I mean, they have to compete against these big-name D1 schools. So how do they still get those top-level athletes to their schools?
It's interesting. With the changing landscape, recruiting will also be a factor as well. For the most part, in the old era where everything was based on FBS football classification, the kids that wanted to go to a big, large school, enjoy large conference sports and a big campus atmosphere, typically at a public school, those kids would go to Division I. If somebody wanted something a little bit different, a smaller campus, a Division III school, an FCS football classification school, Liberty used to fall into that category. Some of these schools have specializations for academics, much like SCAD or Emory. So that used to be the main determining factor from a recruiting perspective as to why you went Division I or Division II. Now that some of the BCS schools are trickling down to Division II and universities like Liberty and Elon are coming to Division I, it really just changes the entire recruiting scope completely going forward.
And really quick, closing here, championship prediction for this year?
It's got to be Kennesaw State against Florida Gulf Coast. Again, Kennesaw State made it to the tournament last year. Florida Gulf Coast was the conference champion. These are teams that have been to the national tournament before. I think that Kennesaw State wants more exposure at the national level, take advantage of those resources. And the most interesting thing about Florida Gulf Coast and Kennesaw State, they're MCLA, SELC Division II schools now, right? But when you talk about NCAA matriculation via the Southern Conference, the Kennesaw State Owls and the Florida Gulf Coast Eagles, Dunk City, these are two teams that might go MCLA, SELC D2 to NCAA Division I in the not-so-distant future.
All right, well, thanks so much, Dave. Coming up next, Rhett and Pat will be right back.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us, everybody. Time to take a look at the SELC All-Conference team. Starting off here with attackmen. We've got Ryan Miller for Liberty, Russell Couture, Davis Goodman, and Brian Connolly. obviously all those guys know how to put the ball in the back of the net. Anyone stand out to you?
It's remarkable. I feel like Ryan Miller is one of these players that's really grown up right in front of my eyes. A freshman playing in Division II, helping Liberty make this matriculation into legitimacy as far as the MCLA role is concerned. I feel like he's grown so much as far as stature, maturity, even the way that he plays. And yeah, he's an undersized attackman, but for as small as he is, he brings a real powerful punch. He's smart, he's athletic, he's versatile, he's strong, he's unselfish. These are Michael Powell-like lacrosse qualities, and you don't see them often. Besides Mikey himself back at Syracuse, when I played in Israel, I had a teammate named Matt Cherry who had similar sorts of qualities. But again, as far as seeing great lacrosse like this from an undersized attackman perspective in person, Ryan Miller, Matt Cherry, Mike Powell himself, really the three only examples I could think of off the top of my head.
Pat, take a look at the midfield. Brett Bernardo for Liberty, Bryce Marakovich there as well, Tim Nordbrook and Justin Kine, I guess, from Florida. I don't know how to say the last name. Sorry, buddy. But any of those guys stick out to you?
Well, you got to think of, obviously, Brett Bernardo. He's the reigning Offensive Player of the Year, so obviously you expect a big thing out of him, especially the dynamic duo that him and Marakovich bring to the Liberty midfield. But I like the Kine kid from Florida. I think he's going to be doing some big things for him. Really going to be one of the key guys that leads this offense and really does a huge thing. And as we touched on, like, this is one of those teams in their region that are trying to make it back to the SELC playoffs as they made it 2 years ago. So I expect that he'll be a key reason why they make it.
Interesting note about Justin Kine. Plays for the University of Florida, transfer from Georgia Tech, a former player for Ken Love.
Oh, there you go.
Nice. All right, long stick midfielders. We've got Thomas Westfall for Virginia Tech, and along with Hayden Madison from South Carolina.
Yeah, we spoke about Hayden Madison a little bit earlier, a really electric player who I think really helps propel South Carolina to new levels of success. The long stick midfield position at Virginia Tech is one that historically is a difference-making position for them. Up until 2014, they had a captain, an undersized long stick midfielder named Josh Two, who really helped drive things forward for Matt Schroeder. So to see Thomas Westfall ultimately replace Two from a leadership perspective at the long stick midfielder position, it's not surprising to see out of Hokie Nation.
Next up, face-off specialist, Holland Frost. We talked about him from Georgia Tech, and along with that, Aaron Silcott. This position does not get enough credit if you're a casual watcher of lacrosse. Just how important is it?
It's incredibly important, and I think that as of recent, the position is finally getting the credit that it deserves. Greg Gorelian and Jerry Raganese of the New York Lizards have devoted an entire academy to the art of the face-off. It's a niche way to really get good at lacrosse and get yourself into a great college program. It's one little thing you have to do. Win the face-off, grind, shuffle, get it to your offensive player, get off the field, and get ready to do it again. And I think that when you take a look at our preseason picks for face-off specialists, all SELC, these guys mean a lot to their program. Georgia Tech is a defense-oriented team. They need to win face-offs in order to achieve success on offense. And we said the same thing about Aaron Silcott at Florida. Florida is a team that has issues with goals for goals against differential. So the more face-offs he wins, the more that it's going to kind of bridge the gap there.
Yeah, you also got to think Holland Frost, he's a monster on the offensive end because he's not only just winning face-offs, he's putting points in the back of the net as well, as he had 40-plus points. He's one of those key guys that are going to really command this offense for the Yellow Jackets, and we just touched on two key guys, but also one other guy I got to mention is definitely Charles Fianco.
Yeah, I was going to mention him.
I left him off because he was on the third team, and these two guys, they were ahead of him, unfortunately, in save percentage, and I know we all touched on it, like, should we put Charles on this? And then we were just like, well, the other two are a bit ahead of him, and they came back, so that's the only reason. But you got to talk about him because he's one of the best in the country, too.
Honorable mention for Charles. Honorable mention.
Absolutely.
Mid-defense, Michael Mastriani, North Carolina State, Patrick Greenwood. These two guys obviously did good work last year.
Yep, blue-collar guys bring the lunch pail every day. We talked about how Mastriani is going to really contribute a lot to North Carolina State. Interesting story about Patrick Greenwood. They're playing UC Santa Barbara in the national tournament in 2014, overtime loss. The way that loss ultimately occurred, Patrick Greenwood was dealing with an uncontested ground ball near the sidelines, fumbled with it, the ball went out of bounds. UCSB had the last possession and was ultimately able to score the game-winning goal off that. I think Greenwood was a sophomore at the time. That could have been a pretty devastating moment in his career to fold it in. He's done nothing but progress forward. He had a great season last year. He's a captain now as a short-stick defensive midfielder for the Hokies, an unbelievable program that made it to the Final Four last year. So great perseverance from this young man all the way.
Defensively, Will Byers, David Cryan, Brant Grouse for Liberty University, and Jake Vargo.
Yeah, definitely got to credit Byers. He's going to be huge. He's one of those key guys. I believe he was first team last season, so definitely I think he's the only guy returning from the first team from last year's all-conference team. So that's a huge thing, too. He's definitely going to be one of the key guys that you look at potentially could upset one of our goaltenders for Defensive Player of the Year.
I think the important thing about Briers and Cryan is the fact that Sommerfeld, who's obviously a great goalie, made it right there with Cooper, again, to our all-SELC team there. Usually the goalie is a very, very vocal leader. Georgia Tech, by reputation, is known to lead by example more than letting this go. And the fact of the matter is that Matthew Sommerfeld, despite being a great goalie with great leadership qualities, he's really not the loud quarterback type. So he really relies on Briers and Cryan to do that job for him. So it just goes to show how important that is to the defensive unit that Ken Lovick directs there in Atlanta. All
right, we're talking about goalies. Already talked about Sommerfeld a little bit. What about Brian Cooper? Is he that vocal guy on the back end?
Everything that Sommerfeld is and Brian Cooper is. They're very similar players. They're both big frame goalies. They go from technical schools. They played each other in the SELC championship. The main difference between them is that while Sommerfeld defers to his defense to be vocal and have the leadership there, Brian Cooper is the all-in guy. He's a quarterback. He's loud. The big man out of Southern California. He really is the all-in leader, and that's why I think that he has a little bit of an edge when compared to Sommerfeld.
Hold on. Here's a question I have.
Okay, here we go.
So, in professional sports, take hockey, for example, similar to lacrosse in some ways, there was times in the NHL when goalies were getting paid $9-10 million a year. Then it went through a phase where you could kind of get your dime a dozen goaltender, you pay them $3 or $4 million, you're winning cups with the guys. In the SELC, do you have to have a top-end goalie like a Brian Cooper to be able to make it to the very end, or can you kind of get by with an average goaltender?
No, I don't think you can get by with an average goaltender in the SELC. It's a defensive-oriented conference. The MCLA, by nature, compared to other levels of collegiate lacrosse, is very run-and-gun. At the end of the day, in order to be a championship-seeking team, you need to be able to score goals, you got to win face-offs, and you need a great goalie back there. And in the way that the SELC culture and is by nature, there's no way that you get through to this conference and make it to the national stage without a real top-notch All-American contesting keeper.
And you got to think about it also from a stance of when you look at the last few years with the champs, who's the defensive MVP? It's always the goaltender. Yeah. So you got to think and it's not like the goaltender is someone that has been putting up, pedestrian numbers all season long. These are guys that are saving well above 60% all season long. And then when they get into the tournament, it's like showtime for them.
So Liberty, 2 freshmen coming in, are they sitting ducks a little bit?
I'm really not so sure. I have a lot of faith in the Liberty coaching staff and defensive coordinator Michael Zampano to really help foster a good environment around these young goalkeepers. The benefit to having a goalkeeper, and Ken Lovick said this in his interview before, is one of these kids might win the job and then become a 4-year starter.
Yeah, that's true.
So the fact of the matter is that Liberty is fortunate to have a lot of powerful punch on the offensive end that will help compensate for things as far as youth in goaltending for them. I don't think that they're sitting ducks. I think that this staff and that this team's identity is confident in order to achieve success, even though they definitely have a huge void to fill now that Ethan Campbell is gone. Again, you talk about numbers. This is a guy who not only stops goals, he scored them every once in a while.
That's right.
Yeah, I think also you got to think, too, even though these 2 goalies were split time, Brian Cooper 2 years ago, he was splitting time.
Yep.
Then last year was his first year as a full-time starter, starting every game. And look what he did, All-American.
There are a lot of teams in the MCLA who've had success with splitting goalies. Chapman has done it. Colorado State has done it. Cal Poly has done it. Virginia Tech has done it. And I think that, you make a really interesting point. Brian Cooper was a guy who split time, really became a real leader and owned that spot last year and coming in as a senior. I mean, it's incredible. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech in the SELC championship game this year, 2 of the best goalies in the conference. I mean, the 3 best goalies in the conference represented the 3 best teams. I would argue that Florida State, in my opinion, was number 4 in the conference last year because their goalie was not stellar when compared to that of Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and Liberty.
All right, time to take a look at what our prediction is going to be for the end of the year award, starting off with offensive player. Pat, give it to us.
I have to say it's going to be Ryan Miller. I think he's going to be the offensive player. This kid's probably potentially not only going to be, he will be the program's all-time leading scorer, but he also will potentially be the SELC's all-time leading scorer and the MCLA's leading scorer by the time it's done.
Yeah, I agree. It's got to be Ryan Miller. I touched on all these great qualities that he has that makes him such a versatile attackman, a quiet, sound, and confident leader. His younger brother should be on campus here next year, which would be very, very exciting. Again, part of rebuilding and reloading, right? So, and apparently the younger generation might be even have a little bit more talent than the first. This is what I'm hearing. But no, Ryan Miller is my hands-down pick for Offensive Player of the Year.
I had Brett Bernardo down. We're going all Liberty here. Clean sweep for Liberty University. Brett Bernardo, just love the way this guy dodges, dips, and dives every which way. I could see him, another New York guy. You got to give him some credit.
Yeah, Long Island guy, played at Marist, Division I transfer.
Yeah.
The numbers that he put up as a midfielder last year, comparative to the other top scorers in the MCLA, it's impressive.
Defensive Player of the Year, Pat.
I think it's going to be, unfortunately, a guy who won it 2 times already. I think he's going to do a clean sweep and make it 3. Going to get that 3-peat. And Matt Summerfield from Georgia Tech. This guy is a stud. He is going to go down as one of the greatest goaltenders in the history of the SELC. When you talk about Ryan Miller as one of the best names offensively in the MCLA, they're going to be talking about Summerfield, I think, the exact same way when they talk about guys between the pipes.
I feel like this whole block has really been consumed around defensive identity and goaltending, and it's tough. Between Sommerfeld and Cooper, it really, really is a toss-up. And again, I kind of touched on it before. The one thing that Sommerfeld doesn't have, Brian Cooper has in spades, and that's communication and real vocal leadership. You take a look at the results that Virginia Tech was able to enjoy last year compared to Georgia Tech. Hey, no slouch for Georgia Tech. Won a first-round game against Westminster and then fell to, the defending national champion Colorado. But again, for Virginia Tech to get all the way to the Final Four, take Colorado to overtime, you can't deny that the big guy wearing number 7 in net is, the proponent that brings them success and is probably going to, help them replicate that this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of going with Brian Cooper as well. I think he's going to say, how do you like me now?
How do you like me
and
now?
Stop the streak. All right, Coach of the Year for you, Pat.
I think it's going to be Coach McQuillan. He's already won it twice. Won at D2 and Division I. I think he's going to be able to get his team to nationals, and a key reason why, and obviously all the talent, and that's why he's Coach of the Year.
I got to tip my hat to Ken Lovick again. It is not easy to be MCLA president, be a leader and a figurehead for your conference within the SELC, and be a head coach. It was a very, very long time since an MCLA president, as a head coach, took his team to the national tournament. John Paul from Michigan used to be very comfortable doing it. Tony Scazzaro might have done it once or twice with Texas A&M, but ever since those days, it's been a very, very long drought until someone's been able to do it. And for Ken Lovick to have achieved that last year and come back with so much talent, I think that he's deserving to be Coach of the Year in 2016 for this conference.
Here's my question: does it have to be a top 3 team or top 4 team? Can it be a guy from maybe the Elon coach? Do they have a remarkably good year, and all of a sudden this guy, let's say they jump up and somehow get into the top 10ish? Does he have the right to win it then? Does it have to be a top
team? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're sitting at 13th, and if he makes this team not only get to the playoffs for the first time, when in Division I, that's great. And then let's say he gets all the way to the semifinals. Okay, well, Elon's making some noise. Oh, wait, they're in the finals now. How do you not give it to him? I mean, I think obviously it doesn't have to be one of these top tier guys, but as we've been saying, last couple of years, the top tier teams have been the ones that have been running the show.
And you touch on that. The coach from Elon, Steve Bailey, has a good platform to maybe be Coach of the Year, because if you go from D2 to D1 and have a ton of success, much like Kyle McQuillan did right here at Liberty, you deserve to be Coach of the Year.
Yeah,
taking a team from D2 to D1 and remaining competitive, in this league, it's definitely award worthy. But you take a situation like that into consideration. You consider the top coaches, whether it's Matt Schroeder or Tim O'Brien or Ken Lovick or Kyle McQuillan. My pick last year was James Foote for UCF. Sometimes you could be a program who's kind of fighting for that 2 or 3 spot in the region, but if you're able to get over the hump and then go deep into the regional tournament and get to new heights for your program, that is also worthy of contention to be Coach of the Year. So I think that James Foote from UCF, much like last year, can be a candidate this year as well.
Yeah, I had Tim O'Brien there kind of coming into Virginia Tech, so I'm guilty of saying it's going to be
that's a good story also, because he's taking over for, Matt Schroeder. Right. It's great that Matt Schroeder is able to help the matriculation there, but again, if you're able to become a head coach, even if it's already a successful program, if you're able to sustain that level of success as a new coach, then again, it's just one of those reasons why you're worthy of the award.
All right, what's the SELC championship game going to look like, Pat?
I hate to say this because I didn't put Liberty in there.
That's okay.
And
they just pay your.
I know they just pay me
your salary.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, I think it's going to be a Tech final with Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech. I think it's actually going to be a rematch from last year, and I think the Yellow Jackets are actually going to right the ship. And, think about it. They remember that sting from last year. Haha, nice pun. But I think losing 10-4 definitely sparked something. And they only lost one guy to graduation. They're returning so many names. We've been touching on them throughout the entire show about how much talent this team really has. So I can't see why not them.
I agree. Virginia Tech definitely has a nice path right back to the finals. There's no way that you achieve success at the Final Four level nationally and don't end up back in your conference championship game, with the limited turnover that they've had. But I think that Liberty gets back in there. I think the battle for Virginia in the SELC championship, I think that if Liberty is really going to, again, get over the hump, turn the corner, whatever way you want to put it, and really achieve success in Division I the way that they did in Division II back in 2013, this could be the year. A lot of offensive firepower, and again, enough confidence in the defense that it could really come together for the Flames against the Hokies in the SELC title game.
Okay, I'm going to go with Virginia Tech. Unfortunately, over Liberty University, Battle of the Blue Ridge is going to be won by the Hokies. They pay my check as well, so but that's okay. We got to get out of here. You got a plane to catch.
8:20 flight to Charlotte, connections in LaGuardia. You got to go.
So as always, just want to say thank you very much for joining us. All the coaches that took time to speak with us, thank you to you, to our producer, Brett Knopp, and everybody on the crew. I'm Rhett McGibbon. For Dave Franklin, Patrick Strawn, we're going to say have a good day. God bless here from Lynchburg, Virginia.